Yeah, thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Karla Coleman. I'm the Educational Technology Advisor here at the CTL. And what does that mean? It means I deal mostly with technology that is offered centrally or supported centrally by the university. So my main role really is dealing with onQ, which is also known as Brightspace or D2L, which is the platform, and it's branded onQ for Queens. So I'm not sure if anybody's had any previous experience in another institution, but the learning management system is Brightspace, but we call it onQ. So I also deal with other technologies as well. I spent 10 years in IT services here at Queens, and I've been in this role here for the last 4 years. Time flies when you're having fun. So I guess I was thinking about earlier this morning about what we would talk about today. So as Carolyn had mentioned, that we just I was trying to gauge where people were at in their knowledge or their information that they want to know about. So what I think I'll do is give a high level overview of how onQ works and how to get started. And then maybe for those that are teaching for the first time, that gives you a basis. And then if those are maybe TAing for a course, to give you an idea how to look at the system from that end. But feel free to ask questions along the way, and we'll get started. So I'll share my screen. Just share the screen. This over here. So to access onQ, we would either go to the Queen's homepage at queensu.ca. You select in the top right-hand corner, you can search and sign in and select onQ. You would log in with your NetID and password. Some folks will have a dual role. Some have a staff as well as an employee NetID at Queen's. So if you're depending on what you're doing or in your role, then what NetID you would use to log in. So when you log in, you will come in to the onQ homepage. It'll show you the My Courses widget. And then based on your role, the widgets on the right-hand side will appear. So the courses that appear under My Courses are courses that you have access to. Typically, a course has to be created for you to have access to it. So some folks will think, oh, I'm teaching a course, I don't see it in onQ. So just because the course exists in PeopleSoft or Solus doesn't mean it exists in onQ. It has to be created. So the first thing I think we'll look at is how to create a course. So you would go to the login to the course creation tool. And then your access again will be based on your employee NetID, and only employees will have access to create a course. Student accounts do not. So when you log in, this would show you a list of current courses that you have access to. I have higher level privileges, so I happen to see all courses in the system. So the left-hand side, you'll create a course. So this will load the courses that you have access to in PeopleSoft. So in PeopleSoft or Solus, there's a timetabling assistant that would identify what courses you are teaching. So you would be enrolled in that course as what we call the instructor of record. So when you have access to a course as instructor of record, that will be the list of courses that appear in onQ for your course creation tool. I apologize because I have access to all courses. This takes a long time. So again, here, my view will look slightly different than the instructor view, but you would click here, it would give you a list of courses that you have access to based on PeopleSoft. So you would select your course that you want to create. This is an enrollment piece, but as the instructor view, all enrollments will automatically be associated. So that means that the students enrolled in the course in PeopleSoft will automatically appear in the class list for this course in onQ. I can choose to do from a blank template or a default template that we have created with specific modules with here with dates for the semester, or you can copy an existing course if you've taught this one before. These roles are based again on who's the primary instructor of record in PeopleSoft. They automatically get the primary instructor role. I would just choose the program that this is associated with. This one must be sociology. Test students automatically get added to the course. And then you can choose any specific tools. These are the default ones. You can choose to add more tools. If you don't select a tool, but think to yourself, hey, maybe I'd like to add rubrics later, we can do that within the course itself. It doesn't have to be now. Next, additional resources. If I want to turn them on, I would enable them here. Again, I can enable them later after the fact, after the course is created. And just a review, and then you create a copyright and you create the course. So when the course is created, you would receive an email that this course has been created, and it would give you a link directly to it. The link are in the URL page would be a link like this. And it's actually the six digit number that identifies your course as this unique course. Of course, multiple courses can have the same name, but this is the number that if you're ever looking for assistance with, would be great to have. It's not necessary, you can give us the title, but technically, if you give me this number, then I know exactly what course you're talking about. I'll just close this page. So that's just I'm not sure if anybody will be teaching or if they're just TAing, but if you were teaching, then that's how you would create your course. It would automatically then appear on your onQ homepage. The one thing I'll note is the My Courses widget. Sometimes if it's filtered under a term that the course isn't listed under, then it won't appear unless you're under that filter. Mine's always at the all because I have access to too many filters. You can pin a course if you want to keep it always at the top for your homepage, but you can also filter by specific semester if you so chose. But some people think like, I don't see my course, and sometimes it's because they aren't under the right filter. So I'm just going to click on a course that I created not long ago, and maybe we'll just have a high level look of what tools are available. The content tool, we like to think of it as sort of a place that people could come to as like one stop, so they can come here and see an overview of what's happening throughout the course. The left-hand side are modules. So this is a test module that I created. You can add new modules. Maybe we'll add like week 2. So from here, you can add additional resources in each of these specific modules. So if I want to add a file, I could create. I could upload a file. I could add a link. I could add a video. And if I'll just sort of show you what that looks like. So maybe I'll just add a file from my computer. I'll pick anyone, open, add. The file gets added. So then that's a direct link to that file. There's a database in the backend, managed files, that this file would be added to as well. So you could, if you delete it, it would still be there to add it back if necessary. You can also add existing activities, so additional tools such as maybe assignments or quizzes. If one is available or due, or you want to be viewed in this specific week, you could do existing activities. I could say assignments. I'll choose my file assignment, and this is a direct link so that students don't have to go looking for the link. If they come to week 2 module in the content area, they can see what's needed to be done. So you can add maybe library resources or articles or such a thing here as well. So again, I think that the content tool can be used as that one high-level overview that students can come to have a look to see what's happening throughout their course. The nav bar here across the top technically should be the same for students across all courses that they take. Isn't also always the case, but there is an idea that courses kind of have the same look and feel so that students have that consistency and continuity of courses that they take at the university. So this is what the default nav bar looks like. So under communications, maybe the first tool we'll look at will be class list. So this class list is populated based on PeopleSoft or Solus enrollment. So when you created your course, it was connected to PeopleSoft. So based on adding and dropping, that class list would be updated automatically as well. The one thing maybe we'll look at is if you are teaching a course and you want to add somebody to the course, maybe a TA or a co-instructor, you would do it through add participants. You would add an existing user. You could search for a user name or net ID if you have that. You would select the student, you would give them a role. So the other thing with the class list, which is nice, is you can communicate through the email class list feature. So you can choose who you want to communicate with, if it's just students, all specific instructors, and then you would compose your email. So everybody appears in the BCC field, so they don't see who else receives the email, just themselves. You can choose to add additional users to this if you want. You could add your own email address if you want to receive a copy of this message. By default, onQ doesn't have its own email system. It uses Office 365. So any further communication would be done through Office 365 and not through onQ. But you could add a copy of your email address to here to receive a copy of this email automatically. You can also choose to filter by groups. So maybe you're a TA and you're only teaching a specific group of students that you want to communicate. You could filter by group and you would only see those users that are in a specific group. And then you could compose your email to just those students as well. There's one thing when I just talked about like adding your own email address to the BCC field, you could choose through account settings to automatically add your email address to receive. So you could say, I'm going to send a copy of each outgoing message. So it would automatically send that to you without adding yourself into that field automatically. Just if you so wanted to do it that way. So groups, again, can be created maybe as a TAs, you only have access to specific group of students. You don't have access to all students. Groups can be created so that it's based on TAs as well. So you could create a new category and maybe make it like a TA group. So you can choose, I'm going to create groups of like 2. I can choose to restrict my enrollments if I have multiple sections in this course and multiple tutorials or lab sections. You could restrict the groups that are created based on a specific section in the course. I can choose to auto-enroll new users, randomize users in groups, or I could choose a group type that doesn't have auto-enrollments, or I could choose a group type that has self-enrollment. So then the students themselves would choose which groups they would enroll into. So again, when you have a group, you can choose to filter based on those when you're viewing submissions for student submissions, whether it be an assignment or a quiz or a discussion. Announcements may be another one based on your role in the course. So if you're teaching a course, there depends on what role the instructor will have given. So some have developing privileges, which allows you to make changes to the course and deliver announcements. So announcements, is that one tool that allows for quick communication. So if there's something that you want to highlight to the students in a timely manner, you would use the announcement tool. The one thing that I'll note is that the announcement tool, they must come to the course to see the information. You can, under notifications in your own personal profile, sign up to receive notifications such as an email for when an announcement is released. But again, that's all personal preference. Everybody individually has their own notification options that they can choose to enable or disable. So if I just go quickly, I can choose to receive an email based on an announcement being updated or a new announcement available. Other high level, you can choose a summary of activities. So for every course that I'm in, I could receive an email as what's happened overall for that course. But again, those are personal preferences. So you would create your announcement and you could choose a start date. So that just means it's always available or it's always available after this date and time. If you add an end date, that means it's no longer visible. It'll be removed from the announcements based on that date. So again, these are things like when I come back to the homepage, I have an announcement widget on the homepage. So that announcement would appear here after it was created if it was published and after the start date. So the calendar, you can see, is also a widget that's on the homepage. So by default, anything that has an assessment that has a due date will automatically appear and create an event in the calendar. So the students can know what's upcoming based on that due date. So you don't have to create them. However, you can create an event if you need it. But if it has a due date, it automatically gets added for you. So the other thing I thought maybe we would focus a bit more time on was assignments and maybe grading. So to create, if you have those privileges as an instructor or as an instructor, you would like to start with an assessment. So you would go to new assignment. You would give it a title. You can choose here if you want to grade it. So maybe I'm going to grade it out of 100. I can choose in gradebook and I can edit or link to an existing. If I don't already have a gradebook item created, I can choose to create one now. If I already have it created, I can click here and choose my assignment, or sorry, my link to my assignment. I'll just create a new one. I can add a due date if there is one. My availability dates and conditions. So if I add a start date, that means the students will see the assignment, but they cannot upload an assessment until that start date has passed. If I add an end date, that means no longer would they be able to upload submissions to. Special access. So this is sort of a key feature. I'll come back to release conditions. So special access is where you would add accommodations. So if you have a student in the course that maybe needs more time or a different availability date and time, you would do that through special access. So maybe it has a group of students that would get a different due date. So I would select that new due date here. I can select an additional availability date and start date and end date if there needed to be one. So the one thing I think that's nice to know is that if you have a group of students that have the same accommodation, you can select them all here from the list and then apply and save. Otherwise, you would be doing it individually. So if you have a group of students, then I think it's recommended, select them here first, set your additional parameters for your timing, and then save it. So then I can see that these two students have a different due date than the due date that I set for the availability date and condition outside of special access. So I can see here that 2 users have special access. Release conditions. So I could set this up to say maybe assignment isn't visible until you complete reading content, or maybe it's not visible unless you're enrolled in part of a group. So you can definitely scale things back if there's need to be based on. Some people do, let's say, as an example, I have a group of students that are accommodated and maybe I want to share files with them from like a slide deck from the lecture, but I didn't want to share it with the whole class. So you could set up a group, apply those accommodated students to that group, and then add their release condition here. There are 4 types of submission file types that you can choose from. So there's file submission, text, on paper, observed in person. So what do those really mean? So file submission is I'm uploading a file to it. Text submission, I would just enter maybe a link to a document or a video that you've created. On paper is just sort of that placeholder. So you can upload a file to it, but it offers the instructor the option to add feedback. Sort of more like a placeholder than really needing anything uploaded to it. And observed in person is just that maybe you've seen a lab or you're performing a specific task or a skill. Again, this is just a placeholder that allows the instructor to give feedback if they needed to. Most would choose file submission as the most common. You can have two different assignment types, so they can be individual or group. If I choose a group, I'll get the choice to choose what group category I want to apply to this assignment. And when you're grading based on a group assignment, if I give one, so only one student in that group has to upload to the submission folder. And then as the instructor, I can only grade that one user, one student in the submission, and everybody in that group would receive the same grade and feedback. So you can choose whether you're adding any restrictions to file types or you're keeping all submissions. If you want to receive an email when a submission is made, you would add it here, an evaluation and feedback. Another option, you could add a rubric. Maybe you have a rubric that you're going to be assessing the students on. So I would add existing if I have one here already. I'll add selected. So then the students would see the rubric based on the assignment when they open it. I can add Turnitin. So here's another one if you're teaching or if you're TAing, maybe we're going to use the text matching database on this specific assignment. So I would enable the similarity report here, and I would enable online grading. I would save. So this adds the Turnitin link to these submissions. So every submission that is made to this folder would be checked against the database for Turnitin. So I'll save and close. So you can see that I have a new assignment. One was created, and each of these icons has a specific meaning. So this means that there's a group assignment, special access, also has a grade item, and this is the Turnitin icon. So I did already go through and create a submission to a file submission earlier, so we can have a look at what that looks like from the grading standpoint. So if I click on the drop down, I can view submissions. So here you can see this has Turnitin enabled. So this specific file had a 0% matching based on documents that were already entered into the Turnitin database. So I can click on the file here. So onQ has its automatic default viewer or reader that will sort of display what types of files it can based on this document viewer. So you can choose as the TA or the instructor to grade within the annotation tools. So kind of like, Word in some ways. So there's 3 different types. We have the marker icon, the notepad, and the text. So simple, I can make a drawing if I wanted to. I could add notes based on color. Here, I can choose to enter my notes. So, and if you don't like any of them, you want to come back, you highlight them, and you can click delete here. I could add like text boxes here as well, different colors, different options, different font, those types of things. Again, anything if you don't like, you can come back to and highlight and delete. But these again are the annotations that are available within Brightspace or onQ. Because I added a rubric, I could click here to expand the rubric to see how I want to score you, or I could click the icon to expand it in its full view, and I could see which specific details and levels based just different than what's scored here, I find. This one, I like this view better, it just gives me more detail. So you would go through and you would select each specific criteria. If you wanted to change the score, you can override that at any time, your choice. You could add feedback for any criterion. And then it automatically scores based on this criteria that you have selected. But again, you can always override whatever you need. It will automatically then transfer that score to the overall grade. You can enter your feedback. So best practice, we always say whether instructor or TA, is that you save as a draft. So that means that it's just saving along the way, and then you can assess everybody individually, like whenever the submissions come in. But when you publish the grades, you publish them all at the same time. So if you're TAing, maybe the instructor wants to go through and have a look at things before publishing. But if you're an instructor, we still say save as a draft and then publish all grades and feedback at the same time. So everybody's receiving their information at one time. Otherwise, it just generates that sort of, hey, how come my friend got their feedback and mark and I didn't, that type of thing. So because this assignment also had turn it in, we can look at that turn it in text matching database results. Unfortunately, because I don't have an actual Forcer file I shouldn't upload to turn it in for these testing purposes. I don't have any matching, but you can grade within turn it in as well. So here in the red, it would show you any text matching reviews that it has found, and you could review them here. But if you're just looking at a high level and you want to grade feedback, so you can do like quick marks. You can add a voice comment or a text comment. You can do the inline sort of grading. So here, if I want to like highlight a text, I can do these are like automatic comments that are like part of the database. So maybe I wanted to say it's about academic integrity, for instance, and add quotations. So it automatically gives the pre-text based on that. However, you can add your own additional comments there too. I think lots of TAs tend to like these. It's sort of you go through them and you can get that understanding of maybe a trend or whatever based on the automated quotations or the text that's available through their database. So I could do my own comment if I wanted to. If I highlight text, I could maybe like say like a strikeout through these. So again, this is automatically viewed within turn it in. This information is automatically saved on the way. You don't have to click to save. But there's just two choices. If it has turn it in, you can mark within turn it in, or you can choose to mark in the annotation tools within the document viewer within the submission for onQ. So I'll come back. So if I'm going to like great work, I would save as a draft. I'll go back to submissions. And you can see here that this is a draft, is just as a draft state. When I'm ready to publish for everybody, I could come to the top, select all users. I'll just do this one for now. And then I would publish feedback. So are you sure? Yes. So that means that because this assignment had a gradebook association, the grade that was in that assignment folder will now automatically be moved to the gradebook item that it was associated with. So we can see here, come to grades, I should have a gradebook item. And of course it didn't work, but there should have been the grade, unless it didn't save it there, my overall grade. It should have appeared there. Oh, but it's appearing here. I was on the wrong assignment, my apologies. So it did move it to the gradebook. Sorry about that. So again, I think that some of it is just personal preference and sort of getting to know how to navigate within the system, within assignments, but there's sort of that few high level, like best practice. So you would grade individually, save as a draft, and then publish all at once. So maybe the next sort of tool we'll look at is the gradebook. So I'm not really sure how many folks that we have here today would be setting up a gradebook, but the gradebook can be set up to match the syllabus, right? So if you're doing a weighted gradebook and you have a number of assessments lined out, you could create the gradebook items to match the assessments. So this one is set up as a weighted gradebook. So it's telling me that I'm out of date, that I have more than 100%. So then I would have to come back and evaluate based on the weight where things are not aligning. There are two types of items or entries that you can create in the gradebook, and it's either an item or a category. An item stands on its own, and a category you can have as a group of things together. So maybe I have quizzes and I have 3 quizzes, and I think to myself, all right, I'm only going to assess the students on their top 2 quizzes. So I could create a category, add all 3 quiz assessments to it, and then set it so that it drops its lowest mark of those 3 quizzes. So that's the advantage of a category. Otherwise, if you're not manually assigning any weights to items, then I would just say that in a group, sorry, that you would just create standalone items. So you can see the difference kind of based on shading or color. These items are standalone items, and then this is a category. It has a slightly different shade to it. And I can see, because this is indented, that this quiz is part of this quizzes category. So if I'm going to create a new item, I can choose what grade type item I want to create. So numeric is a number, a select box is a letter. So each letter has a specific value associated with it. So behind the scenes. So an A+ would be a 93. So it depends on how you want to grade. So the top 2 really are numeric and select box. So I'll create a numeric one. I would give it a title. And this is assignment 2. It doesn't need a short name. And if it is a stand on its own, it's not part of a group, there would be no category. I choose what I'm going to mark it out of, and then assign my weight. So maybe this is worth 5% of my mark. I can choose additional options. Maybe this was a bonus option for students to complete. So that means that this mark would not, the weight would not be against the 100%. It would be on top of that mark. So you could potentially get like 102 if this was a bonus. And if you want to say that I could give you more marks than the max marks, it could exceed. We don't typically add rubrics. We tend to recommend that they're added to the assessment and not the grade item. And we'll just save and close. So now I'm seeing I'm at 165% of my 100, but we can see that assignment 2 has been created. And this column here, I'll just point out, is an association file. So this is telling me whether this grade item has a connection to another tool. So is it connected to an assignment or a quiz or a discussion? If not, it doesn't have an association. So that means that if I'm grading, then I would have to grade directly from this gradebook item. So I would click on the drop-down arrow and I would click enter grades. So now I see all the students in my course, and I can add a grade and I can give feedback. The one thing that I'll note about grading directly into the gradebook is that there is no saved draft. So when you save it, that automatically gets published to the students, unless this grade item is hidden. So if the grade item is visible, it can be seen automatically. But you as the instructor, or if you're in a TA role, if the grade item is hidden, then that means that you can save automatically without the students being notified. So here it's visible, but if I want to hide it, and what it looks like hidden, as I was hide from users, and it puts this closed sort of icon, maybe let's look at it, closed eye icon maybe, the strike through means that it's hidden. The students can't see this grade item until you come back and make it visible. So I think that typically if you have an association within a tool itself, then lots of times the grade items are visible, but if you are grading just on a standalone without a specific association, then I would say to hide the grade item and make sure that everybody has a mark and their feedback is desired before making it visible. Because students, as we said in notifications before, with email and announcements, they can set it up to receive a notification for when a grade item is released or a grade is released. So maybe you don't want them to see everything, too quickly. So best practice in that case would be to keep it hidden. So the other thing I thought too, we talk about like grading discussions to see how that sort of looks like. So if I go to discussions, it was the one tool I sort of skipped over there initially, but want to come back to. So discussions really are a place that students can sort of come to and ask questions, or you as an instructor or a TA role, you would pose a question. So in this specific example, I'm going to talk about maybe, I want you as a student to introduce yourself to the rest of the class. So I would create what's called a forum, and then I would add a topic. So the forum is what appears here in the black text. So that is what I like to think of as the parent. So the forum is really giving you the information, telling you what I want you to do. So maybe I will just go new, and maybe this is like discussion one. So I would like in this discussion, you would give them the details that you want them to follow. I can add these additional options. I can choose it to be anonymous so nobody knows who's posting. I can choose that you have to start a thread before replying to other threads in the topic. As a moderator, that means somebody would have to approve the posts before they're visible to the rest of the class. So just additional features that you can add for restrictions. Here is where you can decide if when it's available or when it ends. So maybe I only want my forum and my topic to be available for a specific date and time, like within the week of a class, let's say you want them to respond and introduce themselves by that date and time, then you would set your availability dates here, kind of like in the assignment. So when it's available, that's when they can make changes. After the end date, it becomes locked. And you can choose on the end date and the start date based on what you want them to see. So lots of times I would say the end date would be, you can still see it, but you can't make a submission to it. So then you can still read and see what's happening in the discussion if you were sort of wanting to have like a better understanding of what's happening. Maybe you didn't get to read everything within that week, but you could come back and review later. So I'm going to save and I'm going to add a topic. So a forum is only visible to a student when there's a topic associated with it. So the topic is what the students respond to. So again, you can add additional information if you wanted to here, based on how you want the discussion to run, right? So again, if you want to add, to hide their names, or if you want them to force them to reply to the thread before they can read others. This one, if I want to make it a grade associated, if I want to assess their introductions, I can do so here. I can edit our link. I'll just create a new one. Save and close. So you can see the discussion appears here in the blue link. So again, that's what the students actually communicate and respond to. You can also limit these to specific groups. So maybe you have a large course and only want to keep things, within smaller groups of students. So if I restrict it to a group, then that means that I would only see responses and threads from those students that I'm in a group with. I wouldn't see everything from the full class. So if I want to edit my topic, I can manage my restrictions. So here I can choose, I only want TA groups to get access to, sorry, let me rephrase it. If I want students in these specific TA groups to be grouped together, then they would only see information shared between their group members. Save and close.
Karla, we have a question in the chat.
Go ahead.
It says, can you set a discussion to only be available after another event? Like they have to do a section and then the discussion becomes available.
Yeah, I think we can set release conditions based on that. Don't know that it's common. I see. Yeah, we can add release conditions to it for sure. So you can choose like content. So maybe you had to, I don't know, maybe you haven't need to set up just yet, but yes, you can. So I thought we would also look at what it looks like to grade a discussion. So if I go to assess the topic, so I can see if I had anybody that had made a submission, I could see their submissions and I could click on the topic score. So that you would see the post here that was submitted by the student. You could give it an overall grade and feedback. Here you do get the save draft option. And when everybody has been assessed, you can choose to publish your feedback. So again, I'll just highlight that a forum is really the parent. It gives you the information, and the topic is what students actually respond through, and that the topic is only visible. The forum is only visible when it has a topic associated with it. So it won't show it to you because it's like there's nothing for them to look through, right? There is no topic for anybody to communicate through. So maybe the last thing that we'll talk about, because I didn't know if anybody has any questions at the end, but is the quiz tool. So I think it depends on what type of maybe course that you're running and whether you're offering quizzes in general, but they can be based on assessment or it can be sort of to gauge where students are at in the learning. So you could use them if you had the quiz assessment in your syllabus, or if you're just using it for learner like engagement for students to use as their own testing to see where they're at. So the best practice, one thing that I like to sort of recommend is that when you create your questions for a quiz, is that you create them in the question library. So if I create my questions in the question library, that gives me a better opportunity to move those questions forward. So maybe I want to add a question. I like that question I asked that week. Maybe I want to move it forward. If it's in the library, I can add it to another quiz. It also gives me a better opportunity if I'm copying a course forward to a new term. If my quiz questions are in the library, it's easier to move forward to the new course as well. So you would create, there's many different question types that you could create. I created one earlier, so you would just choose your question, enter your text, you give it a right answer. You can see the preview on the right-hand side. You can add whether it may be add feedback, you want to give it a hint or descriptions. I can remove the enumeration. All these options are just additional for each specific question. Save. So I have 2 questions available in my question library. So I can choose then to create a quiz and add those questions in my library to the quiz. So I would do new quiz. I would browse my question library. I would add my quizzes, questions, and I would import. On the right-hand side, again, we see these same familiar columns. So availability, dates, and conditions. I'm choosing when this quiz will be available with a specific start date and an end date. If I add an end date, means it's no longer able to be like a quiz attempt cannot be taken after the end date. If there is one, I can add release conditions. So again, maybe I had to complete specific content before this quiz would become available. Special access, I think, is a big one for quizzes based on accommodations. So again, you would add your special access here for quizzes, but I will note that special access can be added in the class list or through the class list as well. So if I add special access through the class list, that means that all those accommodations will apply to every quiz in the course. So I have, maybe students that have an additional 15 minutes based on the time frame of the default for the rest of the class time. Then if I add it through the class list, then I only have to do it the one time. But if I have 3 quizzes and I have 10 students I have to accommodate, if I do it through special access through the quiz, then I would have to do it for each quiz. So you would choose your timing and display. If I want to set a time limit, I can choose one here. If I want to shuffle quiz questions, I can do so here. I can disable hints and instant messages. I can choose how many attempts I want you to be able to complete. And then publishing my feedback. So what do I want you to see? Do I want you to see your mark when it's submitted, or I do not? And if I did, I could choose whether I want you to see which questions, if any, or if it was incorrect with correct answers, your choices. So this is based on what happens when you submit your quiz. So I would just save and close. So once a quiz has been taken and submitted, then as the instructor or TA, you would want to maybe grade it. So some question types can be automatically graded by the system, such as like multiple choice and true false, but some will be short answer or written that you would want to assess before publishing grades. So I would click on the drop-down arrow and I would go to grade. I'm going to have to show all users. So you would see the user's attempts when they have submitted it. So if I click on, it would show me, I should have, if I could see one, if I have on a different course to show you what it looks like when a quiz has been taken. So I can see the attempt. So here I see this user, that I can see the quiz questions that have been scored automatically. I'm not sure if this one has a short answer, but you can see that here I can give feedback if I want to based per quiz. I can override a mark if I needed to, and it would say these are auto graded because it is a type of question that the system can automatically mark. You can enter feedback so that the students would see this overall attempt feedback when their marks are published. But again, you would come and you would individually grade those short answer questions. I'm not sure if I have one here. To quickly see, but it's possible. I don't. Yeah, sorry, I seem to always have the same quick questions, but again, so in that case, when you're grading, you would save the attempts as a draft, and then at the end, when everybody has been graded, then you would choose to publish the feedback. I feel like I'm always just here like this talking head, talking. And I hope that some of the information I have shared today has been helpful, but I'm happy to take the last 10 minutes of this time for anybody to ask any further questions, or if you have any other things that maybe I didn't talk about that you were thinking about that I could go over, I would be happy to do that now. Or if nobody has like questions on the spot, like right now, that's